Her husband said, "Go wherever you want. If you ever leave me,
Why say that?
you'll come crawling back to apologize." Yes, go wherever you want, Simone. Walk out that door. But remember this, when reality hits and you realize what you've lost, you'll come crawling back to apologize. And I might not be waiting. Those were the cold, cutting words Darnell Matthews spoke to his wife before she slammed the door on their 12-year marriage. She believed she was trading up, leaving her boring husband for a wealthier man who promised her the world. What she didn't know was that Darnell had been quietly building an empire she never bothered to notice. What happened next will make you question everything about loyalty, pride, ambition, and the devastating cost of taking someone for granted. Viewers, before we dive deep into this story, I need you to do something for me. If you're watching this from Georgia, drop Georgia in the comments. New York? Let me see New York. Manchester? Netherlands? Lagos? Toronto? Wherever you are in this world, let me know you're here. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. Because stories like this don't just entertain. They teach us about human nature, about consequences, and about the quiet strength some people carry until the world finally sees it. Now, let's get into it. The apartment smelled like jasmine and regret. Simone Matthews stood in the center of the living room, her designer handbag slung over one shoulder, her heels clicking impatiently against the hardwood floor. The late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the furniture she'd picked out years ago when they were still newlyweds, back when she thought potential meant something. Darnell sat on the couch, legs crossed, one arm draped along the backrest. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and dark jeans, the kind of outfit that said comfort over flash. His expression was calm, almost detached, like he'd already made peace with whatever was about to happen. "I'm done, Darnell," Simone said, her voice sharp but trembling at the edges. "I've been done for a long time." He didn't flinch. "Okay." "That's it?" she snapped. "That's all you have to say?" He met her gaze, steady and unbothered. "What do you want me to say, Simone? You've made up your mind." She laughed, a bitter sound that bounced off the walls. "You're so calm about everything. That's always been your problem. No fire, no ambition, no drive. Is that what you think?" "That's what I know." She crossed her arms. "I've spent 12 years waiting for you to become someone, to make something of yourself. But you're still the same man I married. Middle management, a modest salary, weekend barbecues, with the same boring friends." Darnell leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. His voice was quiet, measured. "And what does becoming someone look like to you?" "It looks like Kendrick," she said, the name rolling off her tongue like a declaration. "He owns 3 luxury car dealerships. He drives a Bentley Continental. He takes me to 5-star restaurants where the wine costs more than your monthly paycheck. That's what ambition looks like." Darnell nodded slowly. "So you're leaving me for a man with a Bentley?" "I'm leaving you because you don't see the bigger picture," she corrected. "Kendrick sees me. He values me. He understands what I bring to the table." "Does he know you're still married?" Her jaw tightened. "We're separated. Emotionally, we've been separated for years." "Separated," he repeated, tasting the word. "That's one way to put it." She turned toward the door, her hand already on the handle. "I didn't come here to argue. I came to get the rest of my things." "Take your time," he said. She paused, glancing back at him. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe, or the ghost of what they used to be. But then her expression hardened again. "I deserve better than this," she said. "Better than you." Darnell stood slowly, hands in his pockets. When he spoke, his voice was low and even, each word landing with the weight of finality. "Go wherever you want, Simone. Walk out that door. Live your life. But remember this, when reality hits and you realize what you've lost, you'll come crawling back to apologize. And I might not be waiting." She stared at him, her breath catching. "You really think I'd come back to this?" "I think," he said, stepping closer, "that you have no idea who you're walking away from." Her lip curled. "Goodbye, Darnell." She pulled the door open and walked out without looking back. The sound of it closing echoed through the empty apartment, like the end of a chapter neither of them had wanted to finish this way. Darnell stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and dialed. "Yeah," he said when the line connected. "It's done. Move forward with the acquisition, and prep the offshore accounts. I want everything restructured by Monday." He ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and walked to the window. The city stretched out before him, glass towers catching the fading sunlight like gold bars stacked against the sky. "Reality," he murmured to himself, "is going to hit hard." Simone drove through the city with the windows down, the wind whipping through her hair. She felt alive, free, like she'd just shed a weight she'd been carrying for too long. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from Kendrick. "Dinner tonight? Reservations at Azure?" She smiled, typing back quickly. "Wouldn't miss it." Azure was the kind of restaurant where celebrities ate in private booths, and sommelier services started at $1,000. Kendrick had taken her there twice before, each time ordering without looking at the menu, his black card hitting the table like a statement. That was the life she wanted. Not Darnell's quiet Saturdays and home-cooked meals. Not his "let's save for the future" mentality, while the present slipped away. She pulled into the parking garage of Kendrick's penthouse, a sleek high-rise overlooking the waterfront. The valet nodded as she stepped out, handing him the keys to her luxury sedan. A gift from Kendrick, of course. Inside, the lobby was all marble and gold fixtures, the kind of place that smelled like expensive cologne and power. She rode the elevator to the 20th floor, her reflection sharp and confident in the polished steel doors. Kendrick opened the door before she could knock, his smile wide and easy. He was tall, well-built, with close cropped hair and a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. "There she is," he said, pulling her into a kiss. "How'd it go?" "Done," she said, stepping inside. "Officially." "Good." He poured 2 glasses of champagne, handing her one. "To new beginnings," she clinked her glass against his. "To better things?" They drank, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. "So," Kendrick said, leaning against the counter, "you ready to move in?" She blinked. "Move in?" "Yeah." He gestured around the penthouse. "You're free now. Why waste time?" Simone hesitated. It was fast. Too fast, maybe. But then again, wasn't that the point? To leap into something new, something better? "Okay," she said, smiling. "Let's do it." 3 weeks later, Simone was waking up in silk sheets, sipping espresso on a private balcony, and posting photos that made her old life look like a bad memory. Her friends from the salon gushed over every update. "Girl, you're living! That's what you deserve." "Darnell who?" She liked every comment, basked in every compliment. This was what success felt like. This was what it meant to be seen. But late at night, when Kendrick was on business calls in the other room, and the penthouse felt too big and too quiet, she'd find herself scrolling through old photos. Pictures of her and Darnell at their wedding, at the lake house they used to rent every summer, at her mother's birthday dinner, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something she couldn't remember. She'd close the app quickly, guilt twisting in her chest. He's fine, she told herself. He'll move on. Everyone does. One evening, as she was getting ready for another high-profile dinner, her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Hello? Simone Matthews? The voice was professional, clipped. Yes? This is Valerie Chen from First National Investments. I'm calling regarding your joint account with Darnell Matthews. Simone frowned. What about it? As of this morning, Mr. Matthews has closed the account and transferred all assets into a private trust under his name. You no longer have access? Her stomach dropped. What? I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that any shared financial instruments have been dissolved per his legal right as primary account holder. Wait, Simone said, her voice rising. He can't just do that. We're still technically married. According to the separation agreement filed 2 weeks ago, both parties waived claims to jointly held assets. Your signature is on file. I didn't sign anything like that. There was a pause. Ma'am, the document was notarized. If you believe there's been an error, you'll need to contact your attorney. The line went dead. Simone stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, her reflection staring back at her from the mirror. Behind her, Kendrick's penthouse glittered with the kind of wealth she thought she'd finally secured. But for the first time since she'd walked out, a cold, creeping doubt began to settle in her chest. What if Darnell wasn't bluffing? She shook it off, forcing a smile as Kendrick called from the other room. Babe, car's here. Let's go. She grabbed her clutch purse, straightened her diamond earrings, and walked out the door. Behind her, the city lights blinked like warnings she wasn't ready to see. Across town, Darnell Matthews sat in his home office, a sleek space filled with monitors, leather-bound portfolios, and the quiet hum of a man who'd spent years building something most people never noticed. He stared at the screen in front of him, financial statements, acquisition reports, offshore accounts all moving like clockwork. His phone buzzed, a text from his attorney. Papers filed, clean break. She won't see it coming. Darnell leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. No, he murmured to the empty room. She won't. He closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and walked toward the bedroom. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new moves, and Simone Matthews, for all her confidence, had no idea the storm that was about to hit. The cracks started small. At first, Simone didn't notice them. She was too busy living what she thought was her best life. Brunch at exclusive bistros, shopping trips funded by Kendrick's Platinum credit card, nights at rooftop lounges where bottle service started at $2,000. But then the invitations stopped coming. It started with her business associates. Emails went unanswered. Calls weren't returned. A major client she'd worked with for years suddenly switched firms without explanation. Then came the whispers. One afternoon, while getting her nails done at her usual upscale salon, she overheard 2 women talking in the next booth. Did you hear about Simone Matthews? The one who left her husband for that car dealer? Yeah, apparently, her ex-husband is some kind of silent investor. Word is he's been pulling strings all over the city. Silent investor? Darnell? That guy wore the same watch for 10 years. I know, right? But my cousin works at Morgan Stanley. And she said his name came up in a closed-door meeting about commercial real estate acquisitions. Big money. Like private equity. Big. Simone's hand froze over the color samples. You're sure it's the same guy? Simone Matthews's ex-husband, Darnell Matthews. That's what she said. The woman laughed. If that's true, she really messed up. Simone's chest tightened. She paid quickly, barely acknowledging the technician, and walked out into the afternoon heat. Her mind raced. Private equity? Darnell? It didn't make sense. Darnell worked in operations management. He drove a modest sedan. He clipped coupons, for God's sake. But that phone call from the investment firm kept replaying in her head. The closed account, the private trust, the way he'd said, "You have no idea who you're walking away from." She pulled out her phone and searched his name. Nothing came up. No social media profiles, no business listings, no press releases. She tried adding investments to the search. Still nothing. Frustrated, she called an old mutual friend, Lorraine, who'd always kept her ear to the ground. "Lorraine, hey, it's Simone." "Oh, hey." The voice on the other end was hesitant, distant. "Listen, I need to ask you something. Have you heard anything about Darnell lately?" A pause. "Why?" "Just, people have been saying things. I wanted to know if there's any truth to it." Another pause, longer this time. "Simone, I don't know what you want me to say. Just tell me what you've heard." Lorraine sighed. "Look, I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but yeah, people are talking. Apparently, Darnell's been involved in some serious financial ventures for years. Quiet stuff. The kind of money that doesn't make headlines because it doesn't need to." Simone's mouth went dry. "What kind of ventures?" "Real estate, tech startups, import-export contracts. I don't know all the details, but my husband's firm tried to pitch him on a development deal last year, and Darnell turned them down. Said he had bigger projects in motion." "That doesn't sound like him." "I know, but it's him. I saw the emails." Simone felt the ground shift beneath her. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Simone." Lorraine's voice softened. "You never asked. You were so focused on what he wasn't. You never paid attention to what he was." The line went quiet. "I have to go," Simone whispered. She hung up before Lorraine could respond. That night, she sat on Kendrick's leather couch, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Kendrick was out. Some business dinner he'd invited her to, but she'd declined, claiming a headache. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Simone, call me. It's important." She dialed immediately. "Mama?" "Baby, I just got a call from your cousin Trey. He said something strange happened at his job today." "What do you mean?" "He works in property management downtown, right? Well, apparently, a new investor bought out the entire building. Gave everyone notice that leases are being restructured. Trey said the company name was something like Genesis Holdings?" Simone's heart skipped. "Genesis Holdings?" "Yeah. Why? You know them?" She didn't answer. Her fingers were already flying across her phone screen, searching for the name. Genesis Holdings, LLC. Registered in Delaware. No public-facing website. No listed executives. But buried in a property deed filing from 3 years ago, she found a name listed as a managing partner. Darnell A. Matthews. Her breath caught. "Simone, you still there?" "I'm here, Mama." "You okay?" I have to go." She hung up, her hands shaking. Kendrick came home an hour later, smelling like expensive whiskey and cigar smoke. He kissed her on the forehead, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her. "Good dinner?" she asked, her voice flat. Yeah. Closed a deal on a new showroom in Buckhead. Should pull in 7 figures annually. She nodded absently. He sat down beside her, loosening his tie. You sure you're okay? You've been quiet. I'm fine. He studied her for a moment, then shrugged. All right, I'm going to grab a shower. As soon as he left the room, she grabbed her laptop and started digging. Hours passed. She clicked through financial blogs, property records, archived news articles. Slowly, piece by piece, a picture began to form. Darnell Matthews wasn't just some middle management guy who played it safe. He was a ghost in the financial world, a man who operated through shell companies, private trusts, and silent partnerships. He didn't chase fame. He didn't need validation. He built empires quietly, methodically, while everyone else looked the other way. And she'd been married to him for 12 years without ever noticing. By the time the sun started to rise, she'd found enough to make her sick. Darnell had minority stakes in 4 major commercial developments across the Southeast. He was listed as a silent partner in a tech startup that had just gone public, valuing his shares at over $20 million. He owned rental properties in 3 states, all managed under different LLCs. And Genesis Holdings? That was just one branch of a much larger financial network. She closed the laptop, her hands trembling. How did I not know? But deep down, she knew the answer. She'd never asked. She'd never cared. She'd been too busy looking at the surface, the modest car, the quiet weekends, the lack of flashy displays, to see what was underneath. And now, she was living in another man's penthouse, wearing jewelry bought with credit cards, while her ex-husband quietly controlled more wealth than she'd ever imagined. 2 days later, the second blow came. Kendrick came home early, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. He poured himself a drink without saying a word. "What's wrong?" Simone asked. He downed the liquor in one gulp. "I just got a call from my accountant." "And?" "One of my dealerships is under audit. The IRS is looking into some discrepancies in the books." Her stomach sank. "What kind of discrepancies?" "The kind that could cost me everything if they find something." He slammed the glass down. "I've been clean, Simone. I run my business by the book. But someone tipped them off. Someone who knows enough to make them look twice." She swallowed hard. "You think someone's targeting you?" He looked at her, his expression dark. "I don't know. But the timing's suspicious." She didn't say anything. She couldn't. Because deep down, she knew. Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse. Kendrick's credit lines were frozen pending the audit. His high-profile clients started pulling back, nervous about being associated with someone under federal scrutiny. The Bentley he loved so much? Repoed when a loan default notice hit his desk out of nowhere. Simone watched it all unravel in real time. And every night, she'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Darnell's words. "When reality hits and you realize what you've lost, you'll come crawling back to apologize." One evening, as Kendrick sat at the dining table surrounded by paperwork and half-empty bottles, he looked up at her. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "Know what?" "About your ex-husband. About who he really is." She froze. "I did some digging," Kendrick continued. "Darnell Matthews, silent investor, real estate mogul. The guy's worth more than I'll ever see in my lifetime. And you left him for me." His laugh was bitter. "No wonder this is happening." "What are you saying?" He stood, running a hand over his face. "I'm saying, I think your ex is destroying me, and I can't prove it. But I know." Simone's voice shook. "Darnell wouldn't he?" Kendrick's eyes were cold. "You humiliated him. You left him. You think a man with that kind of power just lets that slide? She didn't have an answer. Kendrick grabbed his keys. I need some air. He left, and the penthouse felt emptier than ever. That night, Simone sat alone, her phone in her hand. She stared at Darnell's contact, her thumb hovering over the call button. She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to beg for mercy. But more than anything, she wanted to hear his voice. She pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. You've reached Darnell. Leave a message. She hung up, tears streaming down her face. Outside, the city glittered with 1,000 lights, indifferent to her pain. And somewhere across town, Darnell Matthews sat in his home office, watching the financial dominoes fall exactly as he'd planned. His phone buzzed with her missed call. He glanced at the screen, then set it face down on the desk. Not yet, he murmured, because reality, as he'd promised, was just getting started. The collapse came faster than Simone expected. Within a month, Kendrick's automotive empire was in free fall. 2 of his 3 luxury car dealerships were foreclosed on after a cascade of financial irregularities were discovered by auditors. His business accounts were frozen. His investors pulled out. The flagship showroom in Buckhead, the one he'd been so proud of, was sold at auction to pay off mounting debts. The penthouse was next. Simone came home one afternoon to find a notice taped to the door. Eviction proceedings initiated. Vacate within 30 days. Kendrick was already inside, throwing clothes into a suitcase. His face a mask of barely controlled rage. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Somewhere that isn't here," he snapped. "I've got a friend in Miami. Gonna lay low until I figure out my next move." "What about me?" He paused, then turned to face her. His expression was cold, nothing like the charming man who'd promised her the world just months ago. "Simone, I can barely take care of myself right now. You're on your own." The words hit like a physical blow. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." He zipped the suitcase shut. "I told you from the beginning. I'm about building, not babysitting. You wanted the high life? Well, this is what happens when it falls apart. People scatter. But I left everything for you." He laughed, a harsh sound. "You left a man who had everything for a man who had nothing." "That's on you." He grabbed his bag and walked toward the door. "Kendrick, wait." "Good luck, Simone. You're gonna need it." The door slammed shut. She stood there, alone in the penthouse that no longer belonged to either of them, surrounded by designer furniture and empty champagne bottles. For the first time in months, the silence was deafening. Within a week, Simone was back at her old apartment, the one she'd shared with Darnell, except it wasn't hers anymore. The landlord had re-leased it after Darnell moved out. Her name had been removed from the lease months ago, something she'd signed off on during the separation without really reading the fine print. She spent 3 nights in a budget motel near the airport, the kind of place with flickering neon signs and paper-thin walls. Her savings account, which she'd assumed would carry her for a while, was nearly depleted. Kendrick had covered most of her expenses during their time together, and she'd grown comfortable with that arrangement. Now, reality was settling in with the weight of concrete. She applied for jobs, positions she was overqualified for, desperate for anything that would bring in income. But word traveled fast in professional circles. Her reputation as the woman who left her husband for a flashy lifestyle had preceded her. Interview after interview ended with polite rejections. "We'll be in touch. We're exploring other candidates. Your experience is impressive, but we're looking for someone who's a better cultural fit." Cultural fit. That was code for, "We don't want the drama." By the end of the second week, she was running on fumes, emotionally, financially, physically. Her mother offered to let her stay temporarily, but the shame was too great. She couldn't face the questions, the judgment, the "I told you so's" that would inevitably come. So she kept moving, kept applying, kept pretending she was fine. But late at night, when the motel room felt like a prison and the weight of her choices crushed down on her chest, she'd pull up Darnell's contact again. And every time, she'd stop herself. What would I even say? Then came the breaking point. It was a Thursday afternoon, overcast and muggy. Simone sat in a coffee shop nursing a small cup of black coffee she could barely afford, scrolling through job listings that all seemed to require skills she didn't have or networks she'd burned. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lorraine. Saw Darnell at the Hamilton Gala last night. He was with some woman. Looked happy. Thought you should know. Attached was a photo. Darnell in a tailored black suit, smiling beside an elegant woman in a navy evening gown. They were standing in front of a step and repeat banner for a charity event that raised millions every year. Simone stared at the photo, her chest tightening. He looked different, confident, polished, like a man who'd finally stepped into the light he'd been hiding in for years. And she wasn't part of that picture. The coffee cup shook in her hand. I lost him. The realization hit her all at once, a tidal wave of regret and grief and shame so overwhelming she had to set the phone down to keep from dropping it. She'd spent 12 years with a man who'd loved her quietly, supported her ambitions, built a future in the shadows, while she chased the spotlight. And the moment she thought she'd found something better, she'd thrown it all away. For what? A man who'd abandoned her the second things got hard? A penthouse that was never really hers? A lifestyle built on credit cards and empty promises? She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. Hot, bitter, unstoppable. The barista glanced over, concerned, but Simone waved her off. She sat there for another hour, crying quietly into her hands, mourning the life she'd destroyed. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to flicker on, Simone found herself walking through the old neighborhood where she and Darnell used to live. The streets were familiar, every corner holding a memory. The corner store where they'd buy groceries on Saturday mornings. The park where they'd walk hand in hand on lazy Sunday afternoons. The small Italian restaurant where Darnell had proposed over tiramisu and cheap wine. She stopped in front of their old building, staring up at the window that used to be theirs. The lights were on now, someone else's life playing out behind those curtains. A young couple walked past, laughing about something, their fingers intertwined. They looked the way she and Darnell used to look, comfortable, connected, complete. She turned away, unable to watch. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her mother. "Baby, I've been worried about you. Please call me back." Simone deleted the voicemail without listening to it fully. She couldn't handle her mother's concern right now, couldn't bear the kindness that would make her fall apart completely. Instead, she walked to a nearby bar, not one of the upscale lounges Kendrick used to take her to, but a quiet neighborhood spot with worn bar stools and a jukebox playing old R&B. She ordered a whiskey, neat. The bartender, an older man with kind eyes, slid it across the counter without comment. "Rough day?" he asked. "Rough life," she replied. He nodded knowingly. "Those happen." She sipped the whiskey, feeling it burn down her throat. Around her, people talked and laughed, living their normal lives, unaware that hers had imploded. A news broadcast played on the television mounted in the corner. She glanced up absently, then froze. Darnell's face filled the screen. Local entrepreneur and investor Darnell Matthews has just announced a major commercial development project in partnership with the City Council. The multi-million-dollar initiative will revitalize the downtown corridor and create hundreds of jobs. The reporter's voice continued, but Simone couldn't hear it over the roaring in her ears. There he was, her husband, ex-husband, standing at a press conference, flanked by city officials and business leaders. He spoke with calm authority, gesturing to architectural renderings behind him. The camera loved him. The officials respected him. This was the man she'd called unambitious. The man she'd told wasn't good enough for her elite circle. The man she'd humiliated and walked away from. "You know him?" the bartender asked, noticing her stare. "I used to," she whispered. "He's doing big things. Real class act, from what I hear. Donated a significant amount to the youth center last year. Doesn't make a big deal about it. But people know." Simone's throat tightened. "Yeah, he's always been like that." The bartender refilled her glass without asking. "Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us until it's gone." She nodded, unable to speak. When the news segment ended and a commercial came on, she finished her drink and paid. The night air outside was cool, a relief after the stuffiness of the bar. She walked for hours, through neighborhoods she'd never been to, past buildings lit up like beacons, thinking about every moment she'd dismissed Darnell's quiet strength as weakness. By the time she made it back to the motel, it was past midnight. She collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she'd call him. That night, she made the call. Her hands shook as she pressed Darnell's contact. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. She was about to hang up when he answered. "Hello?" His voice was calm, professional, like she was just another caller. "Darnell." Her voice cracked. "It's me." A pause. "I know. Can we talk? We're talking now." She swallowed hard. "I mean, in person. Please, I need to see you." Another pause, longer this time. "Why?" "Because She couldn't finish the sentence. The words caught in her throat, too heavy, too raw. "Simone." His voice was firm but not unkind. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize," she whispered. "I want to explain. You want me to fix things." The words landed like a punch. "No. I mean, I don't know. I made a mistake, Darnell. A terrible mistake. And I need you to know that." Silence. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Just give me 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking." He exhaled slowly. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, the park near Riverside. You know the one. I'll be there. Don't be late." He hung up. Simone sat there, phone pressed to her chest, hope and fear warring inside her. Tomorrow, she'd face the man she'd thrown away, and she had no idea what she'd say. The park was quiet when she arrived the next afternoon. Simone sat on a bench near the fountain, the same spot where they used to come on Sunday mornings when they were first married. She wore a simple dress, no jewelry, no makeup beyond the basics. She wanted him to see her, really see her, not the polished version she'd tried to become. Darnell arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. He wore dark jeans and a crisp white button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked good. Better than good. He looked like a man who'd found peace. He sat down beside her, not too close, leaving a careful distance between them. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fountain gurgled quietly. A jogger passed by. Somewhere in the distance, children laughed. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. "I told you I would." She nodded, wringing her hands. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with the truth." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the man she'd taken for granted for so many years. "I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling, "about everything. I thought you were small, safe, boring. I thought I needed something bigger, something flashier. I thought Kendrick was the answer. And now? Now I know I was a fool." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I threw away the best thing I ever had because I was too blind to see it." Darnell's expression didn't change. "What do you want me to say, Simone?" "I want you to forgive me." "And then what? You move back in? We pretend the last few months didn't happen?" She shook her head. "I don't expect that. I don't expect anything. I needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I see you now, that I understand what I lost." He leaned back, staring at the fountain. "You know what the hardest part was? It wasn't you leaving. It was you not seeing me for 12 years. I built everything I have while you were right there beside me, and you never once asked where it came from. You just assumed I was coasting." "I know." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you only care now because Kendrick's gone and you need somewhere to land." The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. "That's not fair," she said. "Isn't it?" She wiped her eyes. "Maybe it is, but that doesn't mean my apology isn't real." He turned to face her fully now, his eyes searching hers. "Tell me something, Simone. When did you realize? When did it finally hit you that you'd made a mistake?" She thought about it, really thought about it. There wasn't one moment. It was layers. First, when the deal with the penthouse fell through and Kendrick couldn't help. Then, when I found out about Genesis Holdings. Then, when I saw you on the news, standing with all those officials, and I realized the whole city sees what I refused to see. And what's that? That you're extraordinary. That you always have been. I was so busy looking for flash and spectacle that I missed the substance right in front of me." A bird landed near the fountain, pecking at the ground for crumbs. They both watched it for a moment. "I loved you," Darnell said quietly. "For a long time, you were everything to me. But love isn't enough when respect isn't there. You didn't respect me. You didn't respect what I was building. And when you had the chance to stand by me, you chose someone else." "I know." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "I spent 12 years trying to show you who I was, not through words, but through actions, through consistency, through being there every single day, building something solid while you chased every shiny thing that came along. I see that now. Do you? Or do you just see what you lost?" He paused, his voice softening. "Because there's a difference, Simone. Seeing me means understanding why I did things the way I did. Why I didn't need the Bentley or the flashy restaurants. Why I was content to build in silence." She nodded, tears streaming freely now. "You were building something real, something lasting, and I wanted the illusion instead of the substance." "Yes." The word hung between them like a verdict. "So what do you want from me?" he asked. She met his gaze, her heart breaking with every word. "I want you to know that you were right. Reality did hit, and it hit harder than I ever imagined. I want you to know that I'm sorry. Not because I'm broke, or because Kendrick left, but because I hurt someone who never deserved it. Someone who loved me when I didn't deserve that either. He studied her face for a long time, as if trying to decide whether to believe her. "I accept your apology," he said finally. Hope flared in her chest. "Does that mean?" "It means I accept your apology, but it doesn't change anything between us." The hope died as quickly as it had come. "Darnell, please." "I've moved on, Simone." His voice was gentle but firm. "I'm building a life that doesn't include you. And as much as it hurts to say this, that's how it needs to stay." She sobbed quietly, covering her face with her hands. "I don't blame you. I had to try." "I know." They sat in silence for a few more minutes, the fountain providing a backdrop to their shared grief. Hers for what she'd lost, his for what could never be again. Finally, he stood, looking down at her with something that might have been sadness or pity, or both. "Take care of yourself," he said gently. "I mean that. You deserve to be happy. Just not with me. Will you ever forgive me? Really forgive me?" He considered the question. "I already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm not carrying anger anymore. I hope you find what you're looking for, Simone. I really do." And then he walked away. Simone sat there long after he was gone, watching the fountain, feeling the weight of every choice she'd ever made settle onto her shoulders like stones. A text came through on her phone. Her mother again. "Baby, whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone. Come home. Let me help you." For the first time in weeks, Simone felt something other than despair. Maybe she couldn't fix what she'd broken with Darnell. Maybe that door was closed forever. But maybe, just maybe, she could learn from it. She texted back, "I'll be there tomorrow, Mama." 3 months later, Simone had found work at a marketing firm. Entry-level, nothing glamorous, but steady. The pay wasn't much, barely enough to cover her modest studio apartment in a decent but unremarkable neighborhood. But it was honest work. Work she'd earned through her own merit, not through connections or someone else's generosity. She'd moved into the studio 2 weeks after taking the job. It was small, with a kitchenette that barely fit a 2-burner stove and a bathroom where you could touch both walls at once. But it was hers. Every piece of second-hand furniture, every clearance rack curtain, every discount store plate. She'd bought it herself. Her mother had helped her move in, along with her younger brother Marcus and his wife. They'd brought housewarming gifts, a potted plant, a set of towels, a framed photo of the family. "It's a good start, baby," her mother had said, squeezing her hand. "Small beginnings often lead to great endings." Simone had cried then, not from sadness, but from gratitude. For the first time in her life, she was building something that was truly hers, not borrowed or built on someone else's foundation. She'd deleted Kendrick's number within the first week, stopped checking social media obsessively, started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Imani, who helped her unpack the layers of ambition, insecurity, and pride that had led her to sabotage her own happiness. "You tied your worth to external validation," Dr. Imani had said during one session. "The expensive dinners, the luxury vehicles, the penthouse, those things made you feel valuable because you thought that's what value looked like." "And now?" Simone had asked. "Now you're learning that value comes from within, from integrity, from showing up for yourself, even when no one's watching." The sessions weren't easy. Some weeks, Simone left feeling raw and exposed, like someone had peeled back layers of her skin. But slowly, steadily, she began to change. She learned to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. She learned to appreciate small joys, a good cup of coffee, a sunset viewed from her tiny balcony, a paycheck deposited into an account that was finally growing instead of shrinking. She learned that ambition without character was just greed in disguise. One evening, she passed by a newsstand and saw a business magazine with Darnell's face on the cover. The Silent Titan: How Darnell Matthews Built a $250 million portfolio in Plain Sight. Her first instinct was to walk away, to avoid the painful reminder of everything she'd lost. But instead, she bought the magazine. She took it home, made herself a cup of tea, and read every word. The article detailed his journey, the calculated risks, the strategic partnerships, the years of quiet accumulation, while everyone underestimated him. It talked about his philosophy of building wealth without ostentation, of creating generational assets rather than temporary luxuries. There were quotes from business partners, from city officials, from community leaders he'd helped. "Darnell doesn't do anything for show," one investor said. "He does it because it's right. That's rare in this business." A community organizer added, "He funded our after-school program for 3 years without ever asking for recognition. We only found out it was him when the check bounced, not because he didn't have the money, but because his assistant made an error. He was embarrassed, we knew." At the end of the article, there was a quote that made Simone's chest ache. "Success isn't about being loud. It's about being consistent, and the people who matter will see you for who you are, not what you display." She closed the magazine and set it on the coffee table. Then she opened her journal and wrote, "I loved a man I never truly saw. And by the time I opened my eyes, he was already gone. I don't know if I'll ever stop regretting that. But I know this: I won't make that mistake again. The next time someone shows me who they are through their actions, I'll pay attention. I'll value substance over show. I'll choose character over charisma. Darnell, if you ever read this, and you won't, because this journal is just for me, thank you. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. And thank you for walking away when I needed you to, because that taught me the hardest, most important lesson: that some mistakes can't be undone, that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. That forgiveness doesn't always mean restoration. I hope you're happy. I hope she sees you the way I should have. And I hope someday I'll find someone who I can see clearly from the beginning, without the fog of my own ego getting in the way." She set the pen down, wiped her eyes, and closed the journal. Outside her window, the city lights were coming on, one by one, like stars being born. She turned off the lamp, crawled into bed, and lay there staring at the ceiling. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was peaceful. Across town, Darnell Matthews sat in his home office, reviewing acquisition reports for a new commercial property development. The space was sleek and modern, with built-in shelves holding leather-bound books and framed photos, some of his family, some of properties he'd developed, one of him at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a community center he'd funded. His phone buzzed. A message from the woman he'd been seeing, Aaliyah, an architect he'd met through a business conference. She was brilliant, grounded, and saw him for exactly who he was. "Dinner tomorrow? There's a new Ethiopian place downtown I want to try." He smiled. "Sounds perfect. 7 work for you?" "Perfect. See you then." He set the phone down and returned to his work, making notes in the margins of a contract, his mind already moving to the next project, the next opportunity. Life, as he'd learned, moved forward, with or without the people who couldn't see you when you were right in front of them. He thought about Simone sometimes, not with anger or bitterness, but with the kind of distant sadness you feel for something that could have been beautiful, but wasn't meant to last. He'd meant what he said in the park. He'd forgiven her. But forgiveness and reconciliation were two different things. Some chapters, once closed, stayed closed. And that was okay. He stood, stretched, and walked to the window. The city spread out before him, full of light and possibility. Tomorrow, he'd meet with investors about the downtown revitalization project. Next week, he'd break ground on an affordable housing development that had been in the works for 2 years. Next month, he'd take Aaliyah to meet his mother. The future, as always, was full of promise, and he was ready for it. Viewers, do you think Simone deserved a second chance? Was Darnell right to walk away, or should he have given her another opportunity? What would you have done in his position? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if this story moved you, made you think, or reminded you of someone you know, smash that like button and subscribe for more true-to-life stories that hit different. Because sometimes, the quietest people are the ones with the loudest impact. Until next time, remember, true wealth isn't always visible, and the people who truly matter don't need to announce their value. The world sees it eventually,